Welcome to the Spoiler Alert podcast, where today we have the film Johnny Mnemonic. It was made in 1995, starring Keanu Reeves, kind of the 90s cyberpunk genre of film. And just before we get into the first half of the movie, Dakota, give to me like a few like kind of opening words on it. What was it like the first time you watched it? Like, what are some things you kind of gather from the film?
I'd been aware of William Gibson, and then the game I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with at this point. Cyberpunk 2077 got announced, and people have been waiting for that since like 2012. And so Neuromancer, which was his breakout novel, had kind of been on my back catalog. And then so I decided to read that, and then but Johnny Mnemonic's actually, it takes place in the same universe, the Sprawl universe. Neuromancer is the first in the Sprawl trilogy, so it's that, Count Zero and Mona Lisa Overdrive. Before that he wrote a short story collection called Burning Chrome, and Johnny Mnemonic's the first story in that collection. So it takes place before Neuromancer, across all of the Sprawl stuff. Well, not quite, but Giant Mnemonic and then the Sprawl trilogy. The character of Molly Millions is she's a main character in Johnny Mnemonic and Neuromancer, but then she kind of, as far as I understand, only really makes cameo appearances in Count Zero and Mona Lisa Overdrive. I've started Mona Lisa Overdrive, but I haven't, whatever. Anyway, in here they change her name and her look, but she's sort of a very iconic character in her little corner of fiction. Very different though than how she's presented in the film. She has mirror shades, they're described as, and I kind of picture them as like her eyeballs are encased in like these chrome, basically like a praying mantis kind of bug-eyed look, but they're chrome reflective shielding, whatever. So it's Information Society did a whole song about like mirror shades, and it's sort of a popular character. Anyway, so Neuromancer is kind of considered to be the first true cyberpunk offering, at least in the world of fiction. I mean, written fiction. Blade Runner in '82 was supposedly Gibson was already writing Neuromancer at the time that Blade Runner came out. I think they came out in the same year. They look very visually similar, and well, I guess it's a novel, so it's hard to, but there are similar things about Asian, I don't know, just a lot of superficial elements that seem to be similar, but I think ideologically they're very different. I think that like Blade Runner asks kind of questions about what it is to be human, and all those things. That's where it's coming from. I think Gibson, and specifically Gibson, I think a lot of people get it wrong, because this is him. He wrote Johnny Mnemonic, so he wrote the screenplay for this, so it's all kind of relevant.
Right.
But
yeah.
Okay, so but a lot of people sort of say that it's, I suppose, like when you think of cyberpunk, it's taking sci-fi and it's making it kind of dystopian. It's making it grittier, and it's not your clean, pristine future that I mean, you'd had dystopian sci-fi before, I suppose, like in the '70s a lot. Westworld and Logan's Run and Soylent Green and whatever. But I think Alien at the end, and even Star Wars, you had the kind of things were rusted and broken down, and just so this is where it becomes kind of hard to define the genre, because like you think of the look, you immediately think of something like Blade Runner, but you think thematically, you could start to apply it to almost anything, like Minority Report, which has that very early 2000s sterility and cleanliness. That's where it feels very cyberpunk, but it doesn't look it in the traditional way. The genre is kind of broad, and it's all over, but I think the thing with Gibson specifically is what sci-fi tries to do is it tries to look at a society and say, and kind of ask like how technology is going to affect us, and where it's going to, I think those are definitely questions that Blade Runner presents, where I think I haven't heard anybody say this, I think, but the way I read Gibson is kind of almost contrary to what everybody says. I think he he seems to kind of just look at it like, well, it's not going to make any difference. Technology isn't, going to change all of our problems. Like, we're going to stay who we are. So I think it's kind of, I think he's overrated ultimately. Maybe it was more impressive at the time what he did, but I do think what was sort of genius is that he didn't have to like really think about what technology is going to do to us. He just had to think about who we are and then just say that's who we're going to be in like 50 years, and yeah, so technology is not going to solve our problems. And really what he's telling are just street stories, but set in a science fiction, sort of a superficial science fiction world, I feel.
I see what you're saying there, and I think it's a smart point because, like, as much as technology has progressed, it still hasn't really changed like basic human instinct or basic human values. We're still like, on the internet half the time trying to get on a date, trying to make money, trying to eat food, basic human shit,
Yeah, so if you want to be
So
called a prophet, you just have to look at now and then just write a story about now and the future.
so of course there's like some like advances that like kind of go in AI or maybe virtual reality, that kind of stuff that would be like the utopia, I suppose.
I read the short story, like I said, about I think a year and a half ago. So from what I remember, it's not. I didn't even realize till this viewing that Gibson actually wrote the screenplay. Like, so he adapted his own work. Obviously didn't direct or anything, but it's different more in the ways that it expands on the short story rather than what it omits. But as far as the corporation, it was like I think the plot is in the movie that somebody smuggled the pharmacom cure out, and they're trying to get it back, and they're using the Yakuza, who have grown to power on a massive level at this point. And in 2021, the film takes place January 17th, 2021. So here we are on the New Year's Day. But so I think they're just trying to get it back, essentially. And so they're using the Yakuza to get it back. So, but as far
Right.
as the first group, I don't, that wants him to.
Those are probably
smuggle data.
pharma.
They must have, I'm actually not sure that's who you're talking about. Yeah, I'm not actually sure. They must have, I don't know who, I think they must have just known what they had and smuggled it out. I don't know if they worked for Pharmacom or what. There are a lot of questions in this movie. I don't know if that's just me missing it or.
All right, so getting into the first half of the film, we're introduced to this character. I believe the first scene of the movie is him actually surfing through the internet, and you see the internet 2021, which is imaged right here, or at least one of the scenes is. And
cyberspace,
Yep, cyberspace. And we realize that he has this port for kind of looks like a microphone jack in the back of his head, and that's where smuggles data. He's what do you call it? Like a data pirate, a data mercenary,
courier or something. I think they call it, which is a really interesting premise. It's basically they smuggle data that's too sensitive to transmit, so they physically carry it from point A to point B, because they can't risk somebody intercepting it.
And I don't know, like, internet security in this future must be at an all-time level of sketchiness, because
we just had solar winds, so it's there. We're living up to the lack of security, but God, so
people really live through the internet more so than we do now, where we literally do not see much for agricultural jobs, not a ton of labor workers looking around. It seems that it's almost more of a Ready Player One, where everyone's reality is in the virtual reality of the internet to some degree, whether you're a smuggler or whether you run this machine, as do some of the doctors and stuff and scientists that they encounter. They run these machines and they're always wired in themselves to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we see it that way because it's Johnny's perspective and that's his world. So it's not clear. That's the other thing. The larger world, it's hard to. It's sort of superficial. You don't know exactly. It's so focused on Johnny and this aspect of it that you don't know what the larger society looks like. But we see the underbelly, I guess, and then you see the corporate aspect, and I in that stark contrast. And I think that's what it's trying to emphasize. But Gibson specifically, I feel, doesn't explore, the kind of things like Blade Runner and asking what it is to be human and all that, like I said. But the only exception I could really think of is the character of Casey in Neuromancer. There's a line that stuck out to me where he describes being stripped of his ability to plug into cyberspace. And it's basically like a bird's wings being clipped. It's like that's who he is. And so he describes falling into the body of his own flesh. It's just sex and drugs. Like, yeah, drugs. He has a drug habit, if I remember. And then and that was one of the only things that I can actually remember out of all of his work that really kind of started to that suggested that idea that this is actually changing people on a fundamental level. Because like he says, cyberspace is he can go anywhere. He has access to, and he describes cyberspace much as it's portrayed in the film as like an actual physical landscape. It's because by his own admission, he's not very technologically literate. So it was just something that sounded cool, describing it on the page. And so it became a landscape, a world. And you go into this world and you have information at your fingertips. And so to be stripped of that really just fucked with who he was on a fundamental level, So, but that was really the only exception that I can remember of like really, it changing us on a.
That's completely believable because I mean, as we're still pretty separated from technology in that we're not cyborgs yet, all of us. There are some though.
If I but
but yeah, we're still pretty separated, but you could tell like how much people lose their shit if the internet went down.
Oh yeah.
For even like a month's worth of time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was the whole Y2K scare, obviously.
And almost not even from a job standpoint, just from a people not losing their shit standpoint.
Yeah,
like,
now
obviously it's going to screw over a bunch of jobs and workers and and
past 10 years,
shit.
like everything depends on a phone now. Like you can't turn on your fucking lights without your phone, So it's like just everything is connected to the internet. I mean, everybody's bugged their homes with Alexas and shit, So it's it really, I think, only started to happen in the past 10 years where it became so embedded, in our day-to-day lives that, it would fuck us up, I think.
And I'm not Christopher Nolan levels of not wanting a cell phone and stuff, but
is he on about that? Or is he just saying don't watch movies on a cell phone? Because I sort of understand that.
I think he's kind of anti-tech in that way. Oh. Like he doesn't trust it.
I don't have a cell phone, but that's only because I don't have anybody to talk to. So just.
But yeah, people just lose their shit. So one of the first big scenes we get is he goes up and he's like a well-dressed black suit, briefcase type of deal.
Very professional. Yeah.
Very professional looking, kind of almost like one of those professional assassins that you see, but he's not an assassin.
I think that gets to be expensive, getting blood all over it. But if you're a super rich assassin, yeah. But
maybe that's what throws them off. They dress super slick, and then they dress
it's like oh, they wouldn't want to ruin that nice
ratty after.
So.
One of the first big scenes is he goes up to this, I would assume, an apartment of some type, penthouse type deal, where there's this group of people that are wanting to implant him with data, and the data gets interrupted. There's a shootout. Most of those people die, and the people that killed the people that gave him the data, they're led by this guy named Takashi. I don't remember the name of the sidekick with the laser whip.
Yeah, so
we see a laser whip.
Then Takashi, I know the actor you're talking about from Battle Royale. His actual name's Takeshi Kitano.
I think he's a.
You can probably tell from just Johnny Mnemonic, this is him adapting his own work, and it kind of feels like a 15-year-old's creative writing class in a lot of ways. But
Well, the name of the director I forgot, but the name of the director, I think this is his one and only movie because he
really?
was a painter.
Oh,
That's
really?
that's why I saw it. Like he's like this European guy that just loves to paint, and he's an artist in that way. And then he said, this isn't a direct quote, but so this is paraphrasing, but he said that I love the idea of making a good film, but films kick your ass.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Compared to, he was much more in his comfort zone with painting.
I'm sure, because that's a solitary thing. I mean, that you have like the studios coming in and all these people you have to deal with. Yeah, it'd probably be very.
So I mean, I'm just gonna let you know for the people at home, I'm not gonna give this one an overwhelmingly positive review,
So
but
10 out of 5.
it does 10 out of 5. It does have some value. It has good, I mean, this might sound condescending, but good efforts and actually like good ambitions. Some movies you see are totally just sapped of ambition and sapped of quality and just sapped of life. That's what the 1 star is for.
Okay. Yeah.
It's better than a 1 star, but
well, I mean, I'm trying to think. They're probably
mainly for the ambition, though.
Well, I'm trying to think. There's probably like The Room is probably still going to get a 1, or even though it's, I guess.
Well, people ironically make it like it is a cult classic, and it's a great bad watch, but
it's still
people.
Like,
I think people. It's almost become more basic to be like, yeah, The Room is actually pretty good, guys. No, it's bad. Okay, we don't know how that guy got his money. He's a mystery of a human being.
Do you want me to summarize my traumatic childhood in like basically a sentence? So my brother, he wanted to go see The Room in theaters and he couldn't drive. And so he got my dad to take him. And my dad walked out of that going, I don't know why everybody was laughing. I thought it was pretty good. So,
When did The Room come out in like 2003?
Yeah, but they do theatrical runs for like Rocky Horror almost, just the, yeah, so.
Or like 99 or something. An early criticism that I can kind of bring up even at this point in the movie, just because we are introduced to some villains, is that I don't think that any of the villains were well rounded out as characters. And then also most of the villains were not very threatening. The only threatening character comes in with Carl.
Is that his name? The preacher shepherd?
Yeah, that's Dolph Lundgren. Yeah, that's the threatening one. That's like the one that you think would go to any extent to.
I actually remember
someone
him as being sort of an ominous presence from my last viewing. I did remember him rather brutally. I suppose it's spoiling it, but that is the name of the show.
It's fine.
Rollins. I think I remember it being a little worse than it actually was ultimately, but. Although I do have to say, as he's interrogating that one dude, he starts by shattering his hand, freezing it and then shattering it. I think he threatens to gouge out his eyeball on the second question. Then by the third, he goes straight for the balls. So it's like, and then we cut away. We don't know if that guy got to keep his balls, but that's somebody who, probably inspires some fear. If, first question, they shatter your hand. Second, they go to your eye. Third, they go for your balls.
Also, the mechanics of his hand were kind of weird because it was a cybernetic hand. It was like half robot,
sort of organic.
But there was like kind of a little bit of flesh in there, just enough to hurt him.
Right.
And I'm like, what? Just cut that bit off.
Maybe his nerves were actually wired or something.
Could be like a big bundle of nerves.
Yeah.
That would just probably hurt a lot.
But he took it like a champ. He was like, "Why do you have to do that?" It's like there's a lot of cheese in this, but it's like
yes, it's definitely got its cheesy moments. All right, so we get introduced to a character known in the movie as Jane, but known in other material as Molly.
Yeah.
So if you hear Dakota say Molly,
I'm talking about
he means Jane. Molly Jane.
Right.
Both names that are like make you think of drugs.
And we kind of see her in a club setting, and she's got the shakes, and so yeah, it all lives up to yeah.
Yep. And yeah, that's where we're introduced. We're introduced to these bodyguards who are working for Ralphie, the kind of rich, like the rich boss of Keanu Reeves' character,
like
Johnny.
his handler, sort of, or not? What would you
kind
call
of his pimp?
Fixer.
Yeah,
I think would be the word. He sets up jobs for him, basically.
Like a pimp.
Yeah, a professional pimp or whatever you could. Yeah, well, actually, I don't know.
So that's where we get introduced to this disease, NAS, otherwise known as the black shakes, where she has like heroin lines, or what you're reminded of. They're like
implants.
They're these implants and injections with tech. So basically becoming too intertwined with technology literally causes a disease, which is one of the thoughts in this movie that I thought was a good idea.
Oh, absolutely.
So this is an example of something that I think is creative. I think it has room to be ambitious. That's where I separate this from some other just totally lifeless movies.
Yeah, no, the NES thing wasn't in the original short story, so that's something that's one of those things where it feels very different in the way that it expands on the source again, rather than what it omits. But yeah, I think it's very relevant to, obviously kind of the conversations you hear about 5G right now, and everybody's worried it's going to cause cancer. And then people have been saying that before about cell phones and brain cancer and all that. So it's certainly something, that I think is in the public consciousness. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. But in this world, it's the generally accepted explanation, nobody knows for sure, is just that you've become too teched up. But then as the film goes on, Henry Rollins' character says, no, it's not, it's not just the implants, it's that, it's all of it. It's the airwaves are polluted with this electromagnetic radiation or whatever that's, just, killing everything. And he points out his own hypocrisy, because he's like, it's all the tech in his room. And that idea that we're so, I think he says, but we can't fucking live without it. So, so that's, I like the way that scene plays out too, because she goes to, again, Udo Kier, so he seems to keep popping up in our the movies we're covering. And she's looking to get hired as a mercenary kind of bodyguard or bouncer or whatever. So, and this is the guy you want to get hired by, so obviously Johnny works for him, so that shows he's quite successful. But she can't get the gig because he's like, okay, well then hold your hand steady, She's like, okay. He's like, just hold it there, and like, she's like, okay, and then like when the jig is finally up, she grabs his, like, it just felt like real, like it's a small moment, but it felt like, she knows she's fucked, so she grabs his arm. I mean, it just felt like a last ditch effort, but I don't know, the jig is up, and I mean, I guess, I don't know, it was a small moment, I guess, just grabbing his arm, but I like that she did. I want to say that's the one thing, Dizzy from Starship Troopers. I can't remember the actress's actual name, but that's how I know her. I think she would have been a good, if it ever expanded and went into Neuromancer. I know that movie's been in development hell forever. I think she would have made a great Molly Millions. I mean, I think she technically is, but she sort of brings what I imagined the character to be. Like there's it's the tough chick thing, but she also brought I think this understated vulnerability to the character that you get hints of in Gibson's stories, but here it's another major change is that she's inexperienced in this one. Like, this is her first gig, whereas the Molly we meet in Burning Chrome is already very experienced, so, but I actually like that. I like that I think it added that, she's got the skills, but she doesn't really know her way around the professional world. This is her first job, and she doesn't know how to handle it. Once she meets up with Keanu Reeves' character and he hires her, that's skipping ahead a little bit. But so you have this, he's very professional, and she's very able, but she doesn't quite, she's green. She doesn't know the ropes yet in terms of like, so she's talking to him all the time. It makes her seem kind of naive. But when the chips are down, she kicks ass and does what she needs to do. So she's a good bodyguard. But I did like that. That there was sort of that vulnerability to the character. I mean, not okay. I mean, probably nothing amazing compared to most, but just for knowing the character, it's like that is an aspect, and they could have went too hard into the tough chick thing, and they didn't. And so I just think that she, managed to capture that. So,
yeah, she definitely did seem dimensional, although the writing
deep, but just I mean, for the character, it worked. I think she did a good job.
Jane, when she first sees Johnny, she sees him basically getting like his head about to be split open and ripping the data out.
Dude.
Introducing Jane to Johnny was literally just, oh, this guy's gonna get his head split open. I better save him.
She's like in the ventilation. She overheard their conversation or something. I can't remember.
That was a super messy scene, and introducing characters the first time on screen can be tricky. But this was a particularly soft, like weird kind of fuck up here. Like,
I mean, she was introduced with the handshake thing, but as far as making those two characters meet is what you mean. That's important, and that moment has to work.
It has to at least make sense. And if you're putting any value into that relationship, you kind of want it to be like really good. There was no meaning behind them meeting.
Well,
they have and there was really no reason for her to stick around.
Oh yeah, right. It is messy. I mean, she's trying to get the job with Udo Kier, and then Keanu Reeves' character, obviously, like that's his fixer or his handler. So they could have. I mean, there's enough there, like, and they're at the same club where Johnny goes to meet him. So there's enough there where it's just they were missing one step, to really make that work.
Yeah, I agree. There was the commonality that they both fucking are mad at Ralphie,
right?
But
and it makes sense for them to even be in the same location.
If it was
yeah,
and if it was just she was mad at Ralphie, what makes Johnny different from Dave on like Tuesday when she was mad at Ralphie then? You know what I mean?
I suppose
it doesn't make Johnny special.
Yeah, Udo Kier sets up Johnny to get his head cut off by a pharmacom surgeon, and because they need the implant for the hard drive in his head, and so they don't need him alive. Molly shows up and says, "I'll protect your ass from these dudes if you pay me a lot of money." And then so he's still on the table, and he's like, "I'll give you like what 20 grand." And she's like 50, and she kicks everybody's asses, and then the Yakuza dude with the laser whip shows up, kills Udo Kier, just for the fuck of it, I guess, and as villains do. And I'm trying to think. Then what's really weird to me though is I think it's Udo Kier's bodyguard who doesn't really. Who Molly kicks the shit out of because she rubbed in. Sorry, Jane. Kicks the shit out of because Molly couldn't get the job, or fuck. See, it's just gonna keep happening. I'm just gonna call her fucking Molly. But
she couldn't get the bodyguard job.
Yeah, and so this actual bodyguard, the Udo Kier, Ralphie, rubs it in, and so Molly kicks the shit out of her. And then, so I'm wondering after Udo Kier's dead, if she just tags along with the Yakuza dude because now it's personal, or because, well, I need a new job. And, I mean, if I was the Yakuza dude, I might kind of, think that, well, he doesn't need her for one thing, but even if he did, she obviously wasn't a great bodyguard, but she just kind of tags along and then disappears. So I don't know if she was working for him the whole time, or if it's just like, I don't know why she tags along. I guess the best explanation is it's personal now, and she just wants to go kick the shit out of Jane. You know, but not that it had to be.
I guess it does a good job of setting her up kind of as an underdog.
Yeah.
But, and I'll get more into this in just a second, but Johnny isn't really an underdog. I don't know. He's kind of, it's a weird character.
Well, it feels like the odds are stacked against him, but he, you know, but I guess in that sense, like the whole city is kind of out to kill him, and he's stuck in the middle.
We meet a character called J-Bone, who is like the king of yes, played by Ice-T. He calls himself like the king of heaven or whatever it is, but heaven is like a low-tech sort of outfit, kind of in the outskirts and in the sort of poor section of stuff. They're grimy.
They live in what bridge is it? It's like, I think this is, I'm assuming since it's a sprawl, it's New York, so that would be, God, what fucking bridge?
Either like bridge. Brooklyn, either Brooklyn or the other one. What's it called? It's like a grayer one.
What's it?
I think it's like grayer or something.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure, but we see it's destroyed, and that's where they're living. So maybe that's why it's called heaven.
I think that bridge goes down in Godzilla.
Oh, yeah.
The 1998 one.
Yeah. But I suppose, yeah, we skipped over the introduction of that character because that happens before Johnny goes to Udo Kier, and he's like, "You set me up." So that was the setup scene. Udo Kier says, "Meet me here," and he goes, and then he gets cornered, and clusterfuck ensues. But basically, at the end of it, Ice-T shows up. Johnny saves Ice-T, then Ice-T saves Johnny. Then Ice-T is like, you know, this scene, I actually just kind of, this line was, you know, it's like, "We're even. I don't know you shit." And then Johnny's like, "Okay." So he like pulls a gun on him, you know, like, so.
Yeah.
So I liked how that played out. But anyway, then more bullshit, I think, ensues, and ultimately Johnny goes to the club to confront Udo Kier's character. So that's the part we skipped over. But it introduces that character. So
yeah, and then towards the end of the first half of the movie, like Johnny learns today that like half the people in the world have the black shakes.
Oh yeah.
And he's educated on the black shakes for like a solid 30 minutes like of film time. Well, maybe not 30, but 20.
But you mean the Henry Rollins
too
character?
long.
Yeah, like this isn't something that's going on. But I mean, it would affect,
and it's not like he is a robot or totally out of the loop. Like half the people in the world have the black shakes. You would learn about it, even if you're.
They try to make it a class thing, but it's really not. I think that's what shows up with the Takashi characters. Even his daughter died of this thing. So yeah, it's like he's going to see people even in his class, you know, dying around him. You know, it's 50% of the population. They're getting Thanos basically, you know. So it's random, you know, it's a high or low. I mean, they try to make sort of this class thing out of it, but it almost doesn't work on that level just because we're told it affects everybody, you know. So you have the low tax, and they're kind of the champions of you know. I mean, yeah, but yeah, I know. I remember the scene you're talking about, the Henry Rollins one, where it's like
he learns from Henry Rollins' character, who's Spider, who's like this tech doctor guy. Yeah. He learns from the Spider that half the people in the world have the black shakes, and they're just really sloppy with exposition this entire film.
Right. If they had made a smaller percentage of the population, like this is just something that started to pop up, and you know, it's not, people aren't really talking about it, you know, because they think they can just ignore it, and you know, or something like that. That would have probably worked a bit better, but it's literally, we're told 50% of the fucking population. So yeah, it's just, you know, if they just changed that number, it probably would have worked substantially, you know, a lot better. But yeah, I suppose the reason, once we're introduced to the Henry Rollins character, because Jane starts to have a freak out, and she starts to seize up. I actually like that Johnny's like, "Okay, you suck as a bodyguard, I'm out." And you know, I mean, it's a little more polite than that, but he just leaves her in the trash basically. And she's like, wait, Spider can fix you up. He can get the shit out of your head, and he can fix me up too. And then, so he's an unlicensed back alley doctor basically, and and he takes her there, and and then you get that big exposition dump.
I will say there was 2 or 3 scenes in this movie where I laughed, and I don't think the movie wanted me to. And her having those the shakes right next to that fountain or whatever.
Yeah.
A ton of that scene was like out of frame. Yeah. There was no motivation to the actual filming of it. It was just, she's got the shakes, she's on the ground, leave her, Keanu, leave her.
So yeah, there's some bad stuff in here where like it's just that could have probably used a reshoot, another take.
I mean, and again, I think it's the guy didn't actually have a filmography that I could look up, but the director of this film, it was his first movie. He's an artist, so I suppose our expectations should have been smaller, but and maybe the producers aren't happy with the decision they made, but this movie ended up making money overseas. I think it bombed here, but overseas they liked it well enough, and it made its money back and then some, so it wasn't a financial disaster. Not that always matters, but that kind of matters. That matters if you want to not piss off producers.
I don't know. Like again, the mirror shades thing, like you could see that being sort of probably a producer. I mean, I get it, but like they're so iconic that I'm just thinking they were like, I suppose it might be difficult to shoot around because if they're not just like lenses, they're they have some dimension to them, so that's going to make camera work difficult. But yeah, I mean, you could, maybe that's why Gibson changed the character's name, because he's just like, well, this isn't even Molly now because she doesn't have the iconic mirror shade. So I guess I'll just call her Jane. But yeah, you can see that maybe and I'm sure it makes sense on a few levels. I'm sure they're scared to have your love interest and lead actress not show her eyes ever. I mean, you had Dredd in '95 come out where that was the same thing. People complained because Dredd's not supposed to take his fucking helmet off, but the studio put all this money in, they got a big star, and they're like, there's no fucking way we're not showing Stallone's face. So I mean, and I love the new Dredd, the remake. It's one of I just love that movie, and hats off to whoever made sure Urban could keep the helmet on, and for him to keep the helmet on and not complain about it. Like that. I love that movie. It's great. Didn't do well, but like financially, unfortunately, but it's a very good Dredd movie. So so I think that's probably where that decision came from. Is probably a producer moment where they're like, yeah, no fucking way, like we're not going to cover the actress's eyes. That's the money. That's the good, like an actor needs their eyes. But I mean, I think you can take V for Vendetta though, Hugo Weaving, a great actor, and put him behind a mask, and I think it's all the more impressive for just how much he gets out of so little. So I don't think it's something that can't be done, but I get where they'd be nervous about it.
And I mean, that's like 90% of Tom Hardy's career at this point.
Oh yeah, Bane, and and what was it, Dunkirk? Yeah, so I guess Christopher Nolan at least likes to hide his face.
I went into the movie assuming this is a slick, intelligent person, that he might not have all the answers, but he'll be able to get all the answers.
Oh yeah.
And one of my big problems with the movie, and I think the movie succeeds in a lot of place in society terms and sort of predicting the future with viruses, diseases, data, technology, internet power, internet like distribution, with economic distribution, all that stuff. And they do predict a lot about that. A lot of where this movie falls apart, I think, is the characters, because as the movie went on, I just thought Johnny got dumber and dumber and dumber.
Which seems to be what they do to Keanu Reeves in the 90s. Like he, even in The Matrix, he plays a dumbass for like at least the first third.
Right, but he progresses in The Matrix.
Yeah. I think that was his career. Like that was he advanced beyond Bill and Ted in The Matrix. Like so he became
in that moment.
Yeah,
in the last 32 minutes of The Matrix.
Right.
But yeah, we have this famous scene, and I think you might be able to recite it. If you can, great. But where they're under the bridge, or where they're under this bridge, and all hope seems lost.
Yes.
Like Ice-T's henchman mistakenly dropped a car bomb on him, and then he freaks out.
And they drop a car on Spider's van for absolutely no other reason than that they feel like it. So you can't blame him probably for being having this big outburst at the sheer madness of the situation, where it's just like, yeah, everybody's trying to kill him now. His last hope and allies just tried to drop a fucking car on him, for like no reason. But yeah, so
but the dialogue in that blow up though it's crazy, man.
I think if they had fleshed out who he is a bit better, because it all just kind of comes out of nowhere, it feels like. But I do think
he's like, I wish my shirt was ironed.
Yes.
And blah blah blah, and I was catered to, and I'm like, wait, so is he like this like high class douchebag?
Kind of.
Like,
that's what they make him out to be. I mean, we do see him at the start of the movie. He's actually with a very expensive prostitute and champagne.
One of my notes is, and this doesn't come in until damn near the third act. It's close second act and third act range when this happens.
Yeah.
And one of my notes here is Johnny is selfish ?
Yeah.
Because you did not see that earlier. He didn't seem overly generous or like an underdog, but you thought that he would kind of be on top of things and not, I don't know.
Well, yeah.
But the freak out is amazing to watch, regardless of whether you think it's good or not.
Yeah, no, yeah, I couldn't even tell you if it's good. But yeah, it's entertaining. It's like a lot of the movie. It's probably quite awful, but it's if you're drunk or something and you just want to watch something bizarre, yeah, this has you covered. But no, I mean, I think maybe the idea is that like he's a professional, but now that he's out of his element, he's down in the slums and his suit's getting wrinkled and ruined and all that. It's everybody's trying to kill him. He's out of his element, and then Jane or whatever is in hers, and she kind of, so she becomes almost more professional than he does by the end of it. I think it's what they're trying to do. I'm not saying all this works. You can just sort of see what they're aiming at. I think Johnny's arc is supposed to be like, okay, this will go on for a little while, but I think we didn't quite set it up. So as far as his brain implant, it's something that doesn't quite make sense to me because he gets it. It doesn't make sense on a lot of levels. So I'll have to try to navigate it, I suppose, like just now rather than later. So they had to remove part of his brain to make space for this physical like hard drive. And he can store up to 80 gigabytes, but then he has a doubler or so. I don't know if it's like compression software. So you can store twice that 160. At the start of the film, they overload him with whatever this is, the cure information. It goes up to like, what do you see, like 320 gigabytes. So I don't know how that works because with a hard drive, you just kind of have the space that you have. I mean, unless you're compressing all that, but you're not. So they just shouldn't be able to.
And also all this for a couple hundred gigabytes. Come on, guys.
Well, this is the 90s. That's a lot.
I'm not putting anything in my head unless it's at least in the double, like in the 10 terabyte range.
Yeah. But petabytes or so. Yeah. I mean, but it did get me thinking about actually, because I'm thinking how much space does that actually take up? I'm like, can you quantify visual and oral information? Like I suppose you could, like if you look at like footage and the resolution that the human eye sees, and I forget what it is, but they have that sort of fixed, and it's like, and then I don't know, I suppose audio, and we could look at that, and it's like, I suppose you actually could probably come up with a number for like what your life, how many gigabytes, well, it's going to be way more than gigabytes, but all the footage and sound of your life is going to take up. In any case, though, I think it's going to be a bit more than, because he says his whole childhood's supposed to fit in that space, which also doesn't really make any sense because like I don't think a specific memory is isolated to a specific location in your brain. The brain will rewire and adapt, and so there's a lot there that's a little weird. But
yeah, also I think they might be able to find like they might be able to calculate your lifetime wattage used, like electric, like literally like your electric, like because
that's interesting.
Living things are like literally like
batteries,
things with nerves and a neural system are. We made the point in a video that everything is natural as long as like humans create it. So, but this is truly like the brain is truly like a natural electrical system and battery that you could almost determine electrical output over the course of a lifetime. Right. I bet there are some numbers out there that
that'd
some
be
people
interesting.
have about that. Oh, something real quick, talking about the brain, we should mention about Johnny is one of the reasons that he has to make these visits to like this Dr. Spider is that these implants, every time you're implanted, you have about 24 to 48 hours to get it out. Otherwise you have seepage.
That's where I was going to go. I'm like, I'm not sure it makes sense, but it's an interesting idea and it creates a deadline. So it's this information is going to start to leak into his brain. The way it's presented in the film is the way it's described in the book, because he describes it as like literal, still like single images being spliced, like watching a movie made completely of unrelated images flash before him, and they actually show it that way. So he gets these, migraines, and I think he starts to hemorrhage from his nose a bit, and because the synaptic.
If anything worked in the plot, I think it was probably that, because that was a constant motivation throughout the entire movie. Whereas, in some characters, you're not sure why they like Johnny, why they're doing what they're doing. but like that's one of the consistent things about the plot.
The outline of it sounds good. I mean, everything wants to kill him. The premise is really interesting. The data courier thing. There's the deadline of the synaptic seepage. So you really stack everything against this character, and it could really become a, it could have like a Warriors thing or something where it's just like everything is out to get you, and but yeah, it doesn't quite work in the execution on virtually any level, but but it's interesting in the premise and some of the ideas in it. It's just he gets that part of his brain removed, and never mind how realistic that is or whatever, but it all of his childhood memories go with it. And so the question kind of becomes, well, what did I lose? I must not have thought it was important if I got rid of it. But he still actually gets flashes, which is sort of realistic, because you're not just going to, like I said, it's not really isolated to any specific part of the brain. So he gets glimpses of his childhood in his dreams, and that's enough to make him yearn for it. So, but it seems, and then he wants to get that back. Now, how he's going to do that doesn't make any sense. What I naturally thought was that they took that part of the brain and offloaded it onto a separate hard drive or something, and then he can just like, and I thought, well, if that's the case, why can't you just use it like an external hard drive? If when you want to experience your childhood, you plug in and there you go. But there are a number of reasons that wouldn't work, but they're ultimately meaningless. But I'll still. So the one thing we didn't bring up is that he doesn't have access to this partition part of his brain. For the client's safety and for his own, you need a code to access this hard drive. And the information so you don't know what you're smuggling, that it provides a certain degree of security. And so what I figured was whoever provided the implant, basically the idea would be that I think the manufacturer, whoever, would have the code, and you get that once you turn in the implant, and then he can get his childhood back. So he couldn't just plug it in and upload that memory, which would almost certainly exceed 160 gigabytes or whatever anyway. But even if it didn't, he wouldn't be able to experience his childhood anyway, because it's locked off by the code. So that made a sort of sense to me, except that's like, I watched it again, and that none of that comes up. We don't know how he intends to restore his brain. It's just like they're going to do some surgery where the way he describes it, it almost makes it sound like they literally are going to just regrow brain matter or reattach part of his brain. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's like, It's like I had no idea, like, where are Johnny's memories? Why does he think he can get them back? My assumption was that he offloaded them onto a separate hard drive or something, but no, it's just he's gonna get his part of his brain back. Did they put it on ice and they're just gonna I have no idea what the actual plan is. So
Maybe they can implant memories into stem cells or something. I don't
I
know.
right, I have no idea, but it just it being the character's primary motivation, you'd kind of wish it would be explained. But yeah, and as far as that goes, I think the closest thing he has to an arc is that although again it doesn't make sense, is that so he removed all that so he could have a career doing this. Then he takes all of his money, which he appears to have been pissing away on hookers and fancy hotels and suits and whatever, and he saves up just so he can undo what he did in the first place. And it doesn't sound like he has any money put away, so he's going to be back where he started. But maybe that's the idea. Maybe I think what they're trying to do with him is show that, oh yeah, this life of luxury didn't matter, and it's a rosebud thing from like Citizen Kane. You just need your childhood memories, and I think that's the arc they're trying to give him. It's like the prodigal son needs to come home to his childhood, and it all maybe could have been interesting, but they don't flesh it out like at all. So
I mean, yeah. I mean that rant scene is like the
yeah.
indelible mark of this film for me. So, for better or worse. So the next character we're looking on is Jane. She was that bodyguard that didn't like Ralphie, hated her boss. We just ranted about her, how she actually gets in with Johnny. That was pretty messy. But overall, as you had mentioned earlier, they could have done way worse with it. They could have kind of made her just tank girl, like where it's sort of tough badass without, which you do have those female characters that are tough badasses in the movie, so it's not excluding them. But to have a more well-rounded character, you don't want a goon, whether it's male or female.
Yeah, and she does kick ass. She's certainly competent and able to do the job, unless she's having a freak out. But she's inexperienced, and and there's a certain degree of not quite naivety, but just like I said, she's green. She doesn't know the ropes. She doesn't know her way around doing the job outside of doing the job. Like, she's good at bodyguarding, but as far as all the little details of what comes with that, like, she talks too much to Johnny, and she doesn't know that's something you don't really do. You don't ask questions. So he's more professional in that sense, but she's very competent. So
yeah, and she's not super professional around Ralphie either.
no.
You brought up the whole thing where she's shaken.
Yeah.
And that was among the scenes that I thought was that was pretty good for her.
Yeah.
But yeah, her motivations are pretty lost until you reach a point where you just accept it. And later on, she kind of opens up a little bit more, and I think her character progresses a little bit.
Yeah.
And how I just explained how, like, to me, Johnny's character actually regresses.
Yeah.
So as far as a character building, lessons learned type of thing, I don't know if Johnny ever got anywhere.
I think this is the problem, though. Actually, I'm glad you mentioned it, because it makes a sort of sense, because the thing is that in Gibson's short story, and also almost with Neuromancer, it's kind of bizarre, Molly's almost the main character. Like, she doesn't take up as much screen or as much time in those stories as it's weird, because like I said, she's the one constant across all of the sprawl fiction. She's reduced to more cameo roles, like I said, in the later two novels, which I haven't read. I've read some of Mona Lisa Overdrive, but so not even in the proper order, because that's the third one. But anyway, but they're all kind of unrelated. But the point is that, like, yeah, she's the one thing that ties them all together, other than the sprawl itself, which is like the whole East Coast. All the major cities have been sort of conjoined. So like the whole East Coast down to like where is it, like Carolina, is just one massive city. So which has some basis in reality, apparently. Like, there were at some point talks of like actually connecting the cities down the East Coast, like with bridges and shit. But anyway, so what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so she's presented as sort of the main character, and him adapting his own work. You could see where he doesn't, he probably didn't realize that in a movie you need to make Johnny the main character. It's called Johnny Mnemonic, and so was his short story. But like you said, Johnny regresses and Molly advances, and that can be fine, but it can't be the final. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, Johnny learns not to be selfish, but it's introduced like only midway through the film that he's even selfish in the first place. So, like,
I mean, yeah, because I don't think the opening scene of him waking up with a hooker tells me a ton about the character, other than like the dude's partying or he has
yeah,
a
he likes his life of
a
luxury.
lifestyle like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
he's resting between jobs. I mean, it doesn't really say anything.
you don't have like this like what you see when you have an entitled at the beginning character is
Yeah.
you see kind of there's something missing in their life, whether it's like this sappy love story where this like rich man or
And
woman
here
has
I really think it's his
takes a step
childhood,
down.
which makes no sense because then why did you do what you did in the first place? Like, I
And it's
mean,
not rounded out at all. Like
right?
there's a
So,
fucking bike. Like I don't know, man.
right, yeah, and it doesn't quite work because it's Johnny Mnemonic, and Johnny needs to be your main character. So, to some degree, I mean, you
Yeah.
have, yeah, you have to give him a fucking arc. So,
One main character is Takashi.
yeah,
Uh
no idea.
he is the leader of the high tech kind of pharma, I believe. Or
Pharmacon,
he's
yeah,
not the leader of it because there's this kind of AI that you see throughout
which I didn't
that is sort of
understand.
like almost this angel or ghost figure that I literally don't understand because by title, Takashi is the head of this pharma place,
Is he?
which
Which I wasn't sure. I knew he was
I
up
th-
there, but he's at the
I think
very
he's like
top.
the president or something,
Okay,
and the
like
only
CEO or
person he's
something.
ever
Yeah.
answered to, the only person he ever answered to was that hologram, and we don't know what the fuck that is.
Yeah, it's like the
So
corporate AI, which I don't know why it's telling him what to do. Like you're being bossed around by your iMac. I don't know what. So there's some significance there. It's supposed to be important to him, but I don't understand who it is or why it's important.
fucks with Johnny too, and we don't get that either.
Yeah, like he's important to it for some reason. And it really just becomes very unclear at the end. Like everything just kind of falls apart. Um, yeah, that's where I think I think you can say it's not great by the end, if there was any doubt. Because yeah, I have no idea what the fuck happened. Everything just magically works out. Yeah, his daughter died of NAS, and that's all we really know. Then he's hiring this Yakuza dude to do his dirty work and to track down the smuggled information, which he doesn't even, as it turns out, he doesn't even know what's been stolen. He just knows research data, and he's like, well, fuck, nobody fucks with Pharmacom. And as it goes on, it turns out that the data was a cure for NAS, which they had secured months before, so it actually would have been in time to save his daughter. But now, who did this? I mean, like it sounds like like a corporate conspiracy, but we don't see any other corporate people. It's just the Yakuza who aren't corporate. So how could they have? Like, I don't know if the implication is that somehow they're responsible for holding that back. Like, how does that fucking work? They're just you know,
Yeah,
yes, it's
Takashi really is the only character, the only elite class character that we kind of get a good look at. And even then, his motivations are all over the place. And
yeah,
and towards the end, like you kind of think that with his child having died
daughter.
of NAS, you think, okay, he's gonna have some kind of rebellion here. And he kind of has that,
Sure.
but it's not significant. He dies too, I believe, and
He
he
does
might have
hand the
like
code off to
he
Johnny, but I mean,
yes, he hands the rest of the code off, but that's not a thing that you need him for, you know what I mean?
what they
Character
did,
what
it made it easier, I guess. But I mean, I can't remember. Yeah, I'm not even sure if it was entirely The code is something I don't understand. I understood it to be a password, like a safe word or something, but it's portrayed as 3 images, like a, lever, what do you call it, a pull slot machine thing.
Like a slot machine.
Yeah.
It's
So
like a picture of an elephant, a picture of something
and then a
else, and then
picture
a
of the
picture
fucking
of the
AI.
AI.
Yeah, it's really confusing. And then that unlocks his mind and he gets access to the cure later on. But yeah, as far as who withheld the Pharmacom cure, that must have been a corporate thing. Somebody else within the corporation had ambitions, but we don't know that because we don't see anybody else from the fucking corporation. The one who has ambitions is the Yakuza leader. And so I don't know if this is what I mean. This shouldn't happen. You shouldn't be like, I don't know what the fuck did this happen to this? Did I miss something? So like, okay, maybe the implication is that, and right there, I shouldn't have to say maybe, but maybe the Yakuza dude worked something out with somebody else in the corporation behind Takashi's back. It was like, this cure could make us a lot of money. I'm going places. I'm going to kill this dude, and this is all some back behind closed doors conversation that happened that we never saw, So like, that's the only thing that makes any sense, because the only one that we see has ambition is that Yakuza dude who kills Takashi. I don't know why. I mean, it's not like he inherits his position. He's a Yakuza, so like he's not in the corporation. Although I think the implication is that they're so intertwined that who knows, maybe, right? Maybe he could just kill the CEO and take it over. I don't fucking know. I mean, but it's bizarre. It didn't make a lot of sense. But as far as an arc, it's supposed to be that, oh God, wow, my corporate ways blinded me to something and I could have saved my daughter, and here's the code. So yeah.
And the next 2 characters we're going to talk about today, one is Spider. He's played by Henry Rollins. You know him from music. What was the band he was in?
History Channel documentaries. That's so.
History Channel documentaries. He was also in The Chase with Charlie Sheen, which if you've not seen that one, we're fucking watching The Chase, because The Chase.
I haven't. Okay, we'll watch The Chase.
It's in its purity. Oh, The Chase. We're putting it on the list.
Okay.
We're going to talk about The Chase. Spider's a doctor. I think he honestly might, per line read, he might be the worst written character in the movie, because he's literally just an exposition dump. He's like, this is NAS. This is the cure for NES.
No, he's.
I think Rollins does a good job.
Right, yeah, that's what I mean. He delivers it actually fairly well. I remember the role as being a huge exposition dump, so I didn't think anything of it. And this time I watched it, I'm like, actually, you know what? Rollins did okay with absolute crap in terms of like, this is not how you do your story. But he sells it. He gets himself worked up. He's like, it's this and this and this. And like the anger I was sold on, his emotions I was sold on, the fact that he has to explain any of this, as you said, I'm not sold on. I mean, I didn't actually there's so much that's wrong with the movie. I didn't make as big of an issue out of it. But now that you pointed out, it's like, yeah, that's huge. 50% of the population. There's so much wrong. I just was like, okay, fuck it at that point. But that's big. It's probably one of the bigger things where it's like, that's, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
it seems like a nitpick, but it becomes like a plot hole. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they throw it in casually, so that's why it seems that way. Like they throw so much in so rapidly, and that's just 50% of the population, and this and this and this and this and this, and yeah, I guess it's like the fridge logic thing where it takes you a little while, and to just even catch up, and you're like, wait, 50 fucking percent? Why the? I mean, God. So. Yeah.
But yeah, he definitely seemed smarter than his character was written. Yeah. Put more into it. You do see a lot of expression with his performance. One that you don't necessarily see a ton of expression in is Carl, who is played by Dolph Lundgren, aka Drago in Rocky IV. So he's like this sort of example of what religion is in this 2021 future, where he literally is like this 7-foot tall Jesus figure that runs around crushing skulls and shit. And
he's a shepherd.
Crucifying. He catches Spider at some point and crucifies him and slits his throat,
to his
or
own
stabs him in
medical
the heart or
equipment, which
whatever.
I don't, the sheer, I guess he does have cybernetic implants, right? That's the thing. I forgot that he has so many implants that like he has, I think that's why they say he's gone crazy, like he's more machine than man now kind of thing. But yeah, so he's able to physically impale Henry Rollins to solid stainless steel equipment, like with a knife, but whatever. Yeah, and basically crucifies him. So he gets run over by a van and as well. So he's kind of, sort of Terminator-ish. But imagine the Terminator as a hobo with, a fucking shepherd staff running around. Halt, sinners!
I'm one of those, like, the world ends now, like, cardboard signs.
Yeah, the end is nigh type. Yeah, one of those. Yeah, street preachers. It's so over the top and ridiculous, but I think that's one of the few areas where the film's definitely self-aware. Like, I think it's deliberately absolutely
I
absurd.
laughed at those, and I think they wanted me to laugh, or at least so have amusement.
Yeah.
And his death. Okay.
Okay.
But his death. We're going into this now. All right. Okay. So there's a battle. There's shooting.
Just before we go into the fantastic death of the preacher, the Yakuza dude. I actually like that. It felt sort of realistic. Like, it didn't feel like Johnny was being super smart, but just a realistic amount where he ducks and the dude uses his laser whip to sever the cables that are holding them up. Then they fall into this dangling shipping crate container. He knows that he can't kill Johnny, or at least he can't cleave his head. He can't damage the hard drive. So Johnny uses that to his advantage. Pulls the laser whip out, wraps it around his head, and decapitates him, which was actually pretty cool. It's one of the few action sequences that doesn't look totally cheesy and actually sort of works.
Oh, we didn't even mention the fucking dolphin.
No, we did not. No, yeah. So
we're in this this low-tech base, and they have strapped up is a dolphin of one of the worst dolphins I've ever seen.
Yes.
And it's the 90s.
Dizzy fucking laughing in the background, and I guarantee you that was like on script. Like, she's just laughing at how ridiculous the fucking dolphin is. So,
and I am huge on giving movies slack for special effects.
Yeah,
but this movie could have done better than that.
I think they thought it was hidden behind all the murky green water, but it's not. It's awful.
But so basically they use the dolphin for the extra brain power to do whatever. What I honestly can't explain what Johnny did in the cybernetic realm.
I know I know the dolphin has a name, so we're told that. What's the dolphin's name? Echo.
Could be. That makes sense.
They give him a human name. We're told that this guy is your last hope. The low techs have him up in their bridge. He can fix you up. We get there, and it's a fucking cybernetic dolphin, and I guess but with like sort of a semi-sentient brain, or I don't even know. I don't even understand. But he intercepted submarine signals during the Great War that's decimated this whole part of the city, apparently, because it's all bombed out and trashy and whatever. Yeah, and he needs the dolphin has a microwave fucking antenna, or fucking, I don't even know. It's so bizarre. He intercepts signals from satellites, but it's such a strong beam that it's like there's the electromagnetic radiation is so strong that it like will fry you, and so he can turn this satellite dish and microwave people to death. You can probably see where this is going, and it's yep. So,
hearing it explained is almost trippier than watching it.
Yeah.
There's also like his memories also like come into play, and there's like a big CGI bicycle that rides around, I think.
Oh yeah.
Like it was something. And that was pretty much how they ended Johnny's
shit on this. Like, you need to get to the end of Johnny Mnemonic. So God.
Yeah. And then, all right. So now I think it's time we can give Carl's death an explanation.
Well, it is easily the
Confused.
most unique movie death of all time, Carl. The street preacher, the cyborg hobo street preacher, murderous, psychotic, yes, gets microwaved by a cybernetic fucking SIGINT dolphin. It's yeah, like burnt to a crisp. Yep. So I don't. It's really. I guess it's that simple, but it doesn't do it justice. You have to witness that. You have to see. I don't.
And the cherry on top. The cherry on top is like, as far as ways to end a movie,
pretty abrupt. Yeah.
Like everyone looking towards the dead body and seeing the corpse,
Start
like the burnt corpse, start to like move. Like Ice-T's like, that's just garbage.
Yeah, but they're like hoisting the body up. It's like, you guys didn't
you guys didn't notice the big fucking crane that was like scooping them up.
Yeah, I kind of did
so
like
that's
the
just
fake out, because it seemed like he could come back because he's a cyborg and shit. I mean, I guess, but it made no sense the way it's presented when you it's like you're looking right at what's happening. What do you think you're looking at? Yeah, so, but so it's. I hate when
I'm glad it's there though, because it's fucking funny. At least
I mean,
it's one of the things that you're like, that's dumb, but it's hilarious.
Just, like, ends. It's like, right, it's just like, that's just garbage. And then they look at the burning tower and it's like, la, like the music swells. It feels completely out of place in this movie. Just the stereotypical happy ending music or whatever. And then it just ends. And then I think it goes into like a techno thing. I suppose we skipped over the cyberspace thing, but it's so difficult to even describe what the fuck is going on. I mean, like, whatever happens, the takeaway is that everything magically resolves itself. I don't know how or why. The AI, maybe Johnny unleashes the AI and the AI causes something stupid, overloads the computers and blows up the tower. And so we see it burning in the background. Johnny gets all of his memories back. I don't know how or why. Maybe they were always there. Maybe he just needed to look inside himself to find all of his memories. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Pharmacom had his memories and I don't understand this. I don't understand a lot of things. This movie ends with a dolphin fucking frying somebody with radio waves.
Frying Dolph Lundgren Jesus with radio waves.
Yes, so this movie is beyond my understanding, I think it's safe to say.
Maybe AI only understands it.
Yeah, maybe it was all part of its grand plan.
Is this what when AI totally takes over? Is this what movies are gonna be like? Are they gonna be like the golden age of film? Was not New Hollywood. It was not what we call the golden age of film. It was not the silent era. It was not the modern era. It was 90s cyberpunk.
I mean,
this is Citizen Kane and Tank Girl is Casablanca.
I do like a lot of the strange worlds we got in the 90s, but this is a strange one. I wouldn't say it's a good one, but it's very bizarre. Maybe
it's a fun one.
Yeah, maybe it's the fun. AI, why cybernetic dolphins are the future. It doesn't need humanity. We thought, so.
All right, so we're gonna talk now a little bit about its place in society, and this is where I get probably the most positive with it. Because you can definitely see the Matrix, that could have been beyond that Keanu Reeves was casted in it. You can definitely see that it coming out in 95, Matrix came out in 99. You can see that there's a big influence there. As we mentioned a bunch, as far as like the sci-fi punk movies in the 90s that were pretty well inspired by Blade Runner, but not quite to the climax that the Matrix did. Like the Matrix was like the Jesus of the 90s cyberpunk films. Like it brought it. I mean, there was some decent there was some decent stuff in there and some respectable ideas in there for
Well,
a long time,
well,
but
one
nothing really transcended until the
I
Matrix.
would I would honestly say I know it's fairly common for people to say, but Mamoru Oshii's Ghost in the Shell, which I think came out in '95, it's animated, but everybody knows that was a huge inspiration for well, I think actually no, sorry, I think it's a bit overstated how much of an inspiration that was on the Matrix. They're very similar and they have a lot like in terms of the technology, but the big thing was just jacking in, and the way that's
Mhm.
visually portrayed, I think is the biggest thing that the Matrix takes away. They feel very similar in a lot of ways, and but in terms of how they combine action and sci-fi and philosophy, and but it's a fucking fantastic movie, and definitely, yeah, very very cyberpunk. But so I would say that's actually, I mean, it's a personal thing, but I would put Ghost in the Shell on like the same level as The Matrix, certainly for me.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of people don't like animated movies, but I'm the same. I don't like anime, like the serialized, like I can't get. But I think there are some. You look at Disney or just there are some animated movies out there that just the sheer level of craftsmanship and whatever that goes into them is. I mean, I think hopefully people can look past and the fact that it's animated and really see it as I think the ultimate form of creative expression because everything is created by hand. And but anyway, sorry, there's a bit of a tangent, but yeah, just Ghost in the Shell, definitely a high point of the '90s in science fiction and cyberpunk, but certainly the Matrix and definitely the better known still. But yeah,
And this movie does feel ahead of the game in terms of societal issues or societal like where we are now with VR, data control, internet disparity, wealth disparity.
yeah,
But some of that stuff is common in sci-fi movies and dystopian sci-fi movies where you have like a big economic disparity,
yeah.
but it's still pretty true. And then this one does it a little differently with pharma and kind of like health and just everything involved with that and how companies will treat their how pharmaceutical companies will treat their clients at almost like livestock where
Yeah.
all right, maybe we cure this many people, maybe we you know what I'm saying,
Oh no,
or
no, I get it.
or if they're getting somebody addicted on an opioid or something like
Oh yeah,
that,
because I
that
don't know if
plays
we
into it.
we brought it up, but the whole idea was that yeah, God, sorry, it's a big thing, and I know we both failed to bring it up. Is that the idea is that the low techs want to take this cure that's in Johnny's head so that they can distribute it over the broadcast it everywhere, so everybody has access to it, rather than letting Pharmacom profit from it and withhold it and put astronomical prices on it. Because this is effectively the cancer cure of the future. And that's the idea. So I think that's supposed to be the arc with to Takeshi or whatever, where we're on, unknown even to him or somewhere in the corporation, they decided to withhold this so that they could maximize profits or something, rather than release the cure right away, and it could have saved his daughter. But I think another thing that's a little interesting about Johnny Mnemonic, I don't think it was, I'm not sure if it was deliberate or not, but it's you could, because a lot of, like you said, it's about class division a lot of the time in sci-fi, but the one thing that could have united or been consistent across the classes, or something that you could have just explored a bit more, is that, well, the NAS affects everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that would be a different spin on it. So you have the low techs, and just their name, I mean, there's a certain emphasis on them kind of being the underdogs and going up against the big tech pharma, and but I think that the
And
realization that this isn't good for anybody, it's like we're polluting the airwaves, and it's something, some commonality or something, you could have made it, yeah, but they don't.
and
It's
you can see that today too because I mean with opioids, like I believe that I don't have it in front of me, but I believe the stats show that pretty much that just as many wealthy and well-off people are getting hooked on opioids
oh really,
as poor people.
huh,
Now the way the law is enforced among like drug enforcement and all that,
right,
there's like some disparity there obviously, but
yeah,
there's a lot of people that are wealthy that are addicted to pills and addicted to whatever else these
I'm
days.
sure.
And all that stuff. That's important, but not fun to talk about necessarily.
No, yeah, I suppose it's bleak, but but yeah.
Yeah. Let's get into some nitpicks. I just wanted to mention that the special effects are a hot mess.
Yeah.
Like, you admire the effort, you admire the scope in a lot of ways,
Park at
but
this point, so
damn. Yeah, but damn, it's rough.
And well, actually, so okay, there's a bit of a history to this. So as far as I know, Total Recall was the first movie to attempt to animate a human figure. And then Johnny Mnemonic sort of tries, like in the cyberspace world, doesn't look super great. And then I heard there's a very brief shot in Event Horizon where Sam Neill gets blasted out and that was, I never even noticed. So it's I think more to do with the framing and the duration of that shot, but I guess it was actually a complicated thing because it's a human CG character. They did good because I didn't notice. In a movie where there are some not so great special effects again, although I do love Event Horizon, but yeah, so maybe I can give it slack for trying to animate a human figure, but there's a lot, the dolphin is really impressive and, yeah, should be seen by everyone.
General, like, negative things towards it is the villains are not fleshed out. They're pretty flat. And like a lot of the henchmen are just weak as fuck too, except for the guy with the laser whip.
Yeah, I mean, it's only because
Laser Whip and Carl are the only villains that are even like a fight.
That's another thing that's interesting though, is this movie has a lot of villains. It's kind of weird. Like there's 3
does have a lot of
antagonists. Like, so that's probably a little messy. But yeah, we have several. I think ultimately Carl becomes the wild card villain in the final villain. But yeah, it is actually a movie with 3 primary antagonists. That's unusual, I think, but yeah. And they all get killed one by one in short succession at the end. Like it's not like a gradual thing. Like they're just, yeah. So, yeah, I guess that's unique. I would probably criticize it, but there's so much that it just, whatever, like.
Yeah. If you found this like a so bad it's good type of movie.
Oh yeah.
Another, like, you might like Tank Girl too.
Well, totally unrelated, but if you just want to see Henry Rollins like in a really awful, like I'd actually say Wrong Turn 2 is just good. I mean, it's horrible, but it's just awesome. So totally unrelated, but Wrong Turn 2, it's fucking ridiculous. Like he's a badass in that, and yeah, so it's completely different. But yeah, Tank Girl.
And of course, I mean, if you like this movie, you're gonna like The Matrix. I feel definitely. Like that's safe to say. You might like every Matrix ever made.
Yeah. It doesn't dip below this in terms of quality. I guess you can say that about even maybe Revolutions is probably above, Mnemonic.
Yeah.
So
I mean, yeah. But for today, Dakota, how many stars out of 5 are you gonna give Johnny Mnemonic?
10.
10 out of 5.
I got 2.5. It has, I guess, some character. It's it's not so. Like you said, I guess its character saves it. It's probably I might say it 2.5.
I was definitely thinking 2 or 2.5. There is a universe where this is a very, very good movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Or there's a scenario of outcomes where this is a good movie.
I think it's actually interesting because if it had taken itself more serious and been in more competent hands, it might have been a better movie. But I think ironically, the fact that it doesn't seem to take itself hugely seriously is almost the thing that saves it because it's such a mess.
Right.
It's those fun, ridiculous moments that, like, I don't know, just it's like something you would see on like Xena or something, just like horrible special effects and, even the actresses are laughing at them. They're so bad. And like, there's just, you know, it's one of those. So, you know, yeah. But
I think I'm gonna give it. I think I'll give it a 2.
yeah, all right. Yeah,
A two with ideas and heart,
strong ideas.
but definitely a movie that was directed by a first-time filmmaker and
Moving pictures are different.
not written for the screen well.
Yeah. Well, which is funny because that was Gibson adapting his own materials. That's kind of what I mean. I feel like he might be a little overrated, you know?
You mentioned that he writes. I'm not familiar with a lot of Gibson work, but he writes in the style of a graphic novel. And I think that's
very comic booky. It feels almost pulpy. I mean, but it's just weird to see Neuromancer and stuff hailed as like, oh, a revelation in science fiction. It's like, again, great ideas. In execution, it feels a little like a comic book. It feels like maybe a 15-year-old, like they got shurikens and there's the razor girls and they got the swords and the titties and yeah, it's like, so that's how it reads a lot of the time. And then occasionally you get hit with really great ideas, but it's like, I don't know, there's that tug of war. And I think it comes across here in Johnny Mnemonic, where it's like, you know, the ridiculous stuff kind of overtakes some of the more interesting ideas. But then it's the ridiculous stuff that also saves it ultimately, because it's, you know, fails in every other regard. So it fails to execute all those interesting ideas. So
overall, I'd say, you know, give it a shot. I think it's worth your time if you have a lot of time on your hands. But I'm just kidding. But if you want to go into it with the right expectations, I think you'll at least have some level of appreciation for it. So I'm giving it 2 stars. Dakota's giving it 2.5.
Yep.
Fun hanging out with everybody. Everybody have a good one.
Yep.
Alvida Zhang.